So, good afternoon. Welcome to our daily support call. Today, we are very privileged to have my newer friend, Justine, with us. She is a life coach and a business coach, which is always fun. As a business mentor, I always enjoy engaging with other like minds to see what the different perspectives are out there, what we have in common, not just in our approach, but in the challenges that our clients and family and friends are going through. So, Justine, thank you so much for making the time to be here.
Oh, Marcus, thank you so much for having me. And I'm just so excited to be connecting with your clients and your students and the people that you're supporting through this time. It's going to be crazy, but that's where, these meetings are so important. And I'm just so excited to have this opportunity to be with you, but also get to know some of your people.
Yeah, and that's the fun part. I mean, selfishly, we were kind of just talking about this when we are doing our sound test and light test, and maybe this is where we'll start. It's about taking care of yourself first. And, we've been talking in groups for a while, et cetera, but this is actually our first time face to face. And selfishly, that's why I invited you, because I thought, why not? Why not have some time just to get to know each other a little bit? So for me, this hour is just us getting to know each other in that way.
Yes, no, and I love how you said that because, not only is it a time for us to serve ourselves and build a relationship, but we actually might be able to provide that value for other people, and the questions that we have for each other on what is your perspective or how do you handle that with your clients in a crisis. It's just wonderful. And it's a great opportunity to hopefully benefit each other, ourselves, right? And everybody else too.
Yeah, and it actually happened just this morning. I mean, all of us are doing different things to help support those within our network. Something we've started to do in addition to this group call is our existing clients every morning get a status call, a one-to-one half-hour status call free of charge. And really what's happening is it's more like, I've always been a believer that entrepreneurs, bosses need bosses. So I have now taken the role of boss. And what we're doing is we're iterating on a day-to-day basis because there's so much transition happening in the world right now that instead of taking the time through mentoring, through coaching to help them figure it out themselves, I'm like, no, let's accelerate this process. Here's your answers. Let's do it. And even this morning, something came up with one of my students, and she was having a bit of anxiety around this topic. And she was questioning the ethics about making money when so many people are struggling. And we talked through it. And a couple of the things we talked about was one, what you and I just said, is that in order for us to serve not just our own families, I mean, she has a daughter and her mother's actually in hospital right now, which is not good. In order to serve her direct family, she needs to make sure that she is thriving while we transition and pivot. And then secondly, to serve her clients, like not even down the road when things normalize, but today, in order to serve her clients, she has to survive and thrive. So the ethics of it are kind of okay. It's like, take care of you first so you can take care of others. And I love the example of every time someone's on an airplane and the stewardess, they go through the things, here's your exits to the sides and to the back. And they're like, when reaching for your oxygen mask, make sure to attach yours first before helping others. And that's just so true in life. You have to take care of you before you can take care of others. So the second point, and we're going to talk about this, I want your point of view on it, is what's really interesting is something I like to teach people. Let me give you a little background to me and to the audience that may not know this. I actually grew up very religious. My grandfather on my mom's side was a minister, a Baptist minister. So I grew up in the church. I grew up with this strong sense of right and wrong. As a teenager, I explored other religions and realized that guilt can be a powerful weapon. And I'm not saying I walked away from religion, but I understood how the tools work. And I'm still a very deeply spiritual man and have my own personal beliefs, which, we don't need to get into today. But what I like to teach people is that the concept of right and wrong is passed on to us from our parents, and in a greater scheme of things from society, from government, from people in authority. It's a way to control what we want people to do and not do. But when we get to the truth of it, there's actually no such thing because it's so subjective. So what I like to teach in business and in life is choice and consequence. You are fully in charge of every choice you make. You simply have to examine the consequences and determine whether you're willing to accept it or not. And if you make a choice and don't like the consequence, guess what? You can make another choice. So you're nodding profusely, so I got to shut up for a minute.
I'm just dying over here. I'm just dying over here because you're just and I'm so glad we finally took the jump and got on a call, whether it was just us or with other people that are joining us too, because this is just amazing to know about you and to know your background and to know how you're supporting your clients on a deeper level. And I'm nodding because it's just so true. I can't help myself. I literally cannot control my body right now. It's so exciting to be connected with other people that understand so many points that I wanted to go over. Let's go back to the first point where we're talking about your client that, was struggling with that anxiety, and that fear of being unethical and not being charitable during these times of crisis. That's a real pain that people feel when they feel that guilt, right? And that's based on her previous belief system that was given to her by her parents, by her experiences, whatever fueled and molded her as a human being, right? And so it's one of those things where it immediately impacts our choices based on that's what we were given to go from, right? And so without further knowledge, without mentors, without coaches, without other people that you trust and like and trust to support you, it's hard, because then she's getting all locked up and she's like, I'm not being ethical. I can't be asking for sales when people aren't sure if they're going to make their mortgage. And so here's the thing. Here's the way I see it, just to provide a perspective for people as well. I 1000% agree with people that are still promoting their business, because in this time of crisis, your solution may be the number one thing someone is searching for right now. We don't know. But if you stop your ads, if you stop showing up, you just pretty much disappear and go quarantine online, and you just don't even show up because you don't want to feel like you're forcing yourself on people, and you don't show up for that person that needed your solution, that person is not served. I doubt your brand is about not serving people. 1000% people in the service industry, which many of us are as entrepreneurs in some way, shape, or form, are providing a product that takes care of that service or solution that needs to be provided. We're all about serving. We're all about the results. We're all about that solution. And so if you can focus on the fact that you are helping, you are serving, you don't know who you're serving, but by putting yourself out there and saying, hey, I know times are tough, but if this is the solution you're looking for, I'm here. I'm here for you during this time of crisis. And I want to see you not only survive, but I want to see you thrive through this. And, I don't want the pandemic to be only panic. I want to see it as perseverance for you. And so that's where the messaging is crucial, because when you come from a place of empathy, it's not sleazy, it's not salesy, it's not, it's providing a solution. And so when you can bring yourself to that place, and when you're anxious about it, and you're like, oh my gosh, and I feel like people will generally have those thoughts, even if they do have a solid background and have that feeling of empathy, because we're human and we care about people genuinely for most of the time. Most people I know, that's how people are. And it's beautiful. But at the same time, like you mentioned, Marcus, taking care of yourself, you are running a business. And if you're stumbling on running the business, then focus on the fact that you're providing a solution. So if you can't focus on you in the sense of you're too blocked in your mindset, we'll have to work on that down the road. But if you can at least focus on the fact that you're providing a solution or a service or something that is helping and serving other people, then that will get you over the fence, and you will be showing up for the people that need you and giving that opportunity to people.
No,
That's not,
absolutely.
that's
So let me make a small editor's note here too, because we're not
yes,
just
absolutely.
dealing with people that are entrepreneurs and business owners. There's some people that work for other companies working remotely.
Okay.
And then there's some people that aren't working at all. They're just sitting at home. So I want to just say all the stuff Justine's talking about, all the stuff we're talking about today, isn't just if you own your own business. So for example, taking care of yourself first can be just as easy as, and again, we were talking about this a bit, If regularly the first thing you do in the morning is get up and go to the gym, what are you doing now? Are you sleeping in? Are you doing whatever? No, have a routine and still take care of your physical self. Take care of your spiritual self, your emotional self. Are you still learning every day? Like it's important that whatever it is you're doing, that you're still taking care of you first so that you can best serve others. Especially during a pandemic, your health is like, it's always everything, but even now more so, be mindful and conscious of it. So I just wanted to put that editor's note in there. Something else I wanted to mention too is, and I understand why you were doing, you did talk about briefly mindset being everything, and you demonstrated empathy with the words, I know times are tough, but, right? I'm not a huge fan of the word but, because, you know, behold the underlying truth. It means everything before that becomes irrelevant. It's only what we say after that actually has meaning. And we're so careful with words. Even, I don't know if you've noticed, but in a lot of the hashtagging I'm doing, even around this, I don't call it the COVID-19 hashtag. It's the Courage-19 hashtag, right? I don't use the term self-isolation. I use the
I
term
did notice. I did notice some very selective hashtagging going on, and I was going to ask you about it, but I didn't realize that was why. That's awesome.
Yeah, because words, we know they have power. We know they have energy. So even I get the empathy behind saying, I know times are tough, but when we validate that type of thought process, then things can continue to be tough. And I know there are people that are very challenged right now, right? Challenge to me is an okay word. At the same time, I know many people, like you and I were talking just before the call during the sound test and everything, life hasn't really changed too much for you and me because we work remotely anyway. We're part of distributed teams. So not a lot has really shifted. And there's many companies doing really, really well right now. So not everyone is going through a tough time. So I just wanted to comment on that because it is really powerful that we are conscious of the words we use and the impact they can have.
I love that thought. I love that note. It's one of those things that sometimes when you get, it's just so valuable to hear other people's side of the coin. I guess that's what I mean to say.
Absolutely.
So that's wonderful. So the second point, so I really would encourage you guys, going back to the first point, don't focus on the fear of ethics in the sense that you're hurting people. Focus on helping and serving, because that's what we do anyways. It doesn't change. You and I are doing the same thing we've always done, Marcus. We're showing up to serve.
Well,
We're showing up to serve.
You're absolutely right. And again, that's something, there's a sales module that we have in our mentoring programs. And the line we use in that sales module is serve first, last, and always. And what's really helped with our clients is, as we've transitioned through what is going on in the world right now, is we've just continued to serve them in newer, in bolder ways. But they didn't react like, oh, look, you're doing something special, because this is literally how we've always been. And I'll give you an example, and this isn't to toot our own horn, but it's easy to put words out there and do things when things are good, but when it's suddenly not, and it's a little more challenging, that's when really your character comes out. So we have a 1-year mentoring program, for example, and we always talk about serving first, last, and always. And we've had people leave the program, we've had people graduate from the program, and every week while you're in the program, you get a weekly status call as part of what we do. It's kind of similar to what you and I are doing right now. And our commitment level of my team is so high that even if someone leaves because they just don't want to continue, they didn't see the value in it, or whatever their reason is, we still offer them their weekly status call at no charge. We continue to check in with them to make sure they're doing well, because that's what matters to us, is serving them in the way they need to be served. And this was actually a lesson my wife taught me, believe it or not. We've been married for 10 years. And we used to be challenged a lot. And I'll just point at this guy. I used to be challenged a lot because I would always I'd always love my wife on my terms. And yet things somehow were not getting any better. And it's only when I finally learned and understood, she beat it into my head enough that I needed to love her the way she wanted to be loved. And things really transformed for us a lot that way. So, you know, it's one of those things where, same thing in business, you know, we have an offering and we want to attract and we want to market to an audience that obviously wants what we have to offer. Yet at the same time, we can't be so fixated on this is what I'm giving you that we're not listening to what they actually want.
Oh, that's so powerful. I hope for people that are listening, I hope you caught that, because that was like one of the largest gold nuggets that I've heard in a long time. And the power of listening, not only to, you know, and because we have such a wide variety of people that are possibly here with us, right? You know, in life, if that's listening to your wife, if that's listening to your spouse, family members, your coworkers, your team that, you know, need you, your clients, the power of listening, and listening with intention, not just giving someone your attention, like I'm giving Marcus my attention right now and I'm talking with him, but I'm listening with intention so that we can have a powerful, valuable conversation, and be teaching and be sharing with the audience here and the clients. And so it's so important to learn that skill alone. And sometimes it's hard because, like you said, you were doing what you thought was right, and you were trying to be the best husband, I'm sure. And you know, it just was like, well, wait, what? Like, what happened? And so even something for me, just a personal experience for me, my husband is not very familiar with the entrepreneurial space. So when I'm talking about what my vision is and how I want to impact and how I'm setting up my business model and all that kind of stuff, and he wasn't excited at first, I thought he wasn't supporting me, but he just didn't share the vision. And so for couples and for people that are in business, or if you're trying a new job and you're super excited about something and your spouse or your family isn't really there, it's not that they don't support you, it's just not their dream. It's not their vision. They might not be as excited because they just aren't that's not for them. And that's okay. And I had to realize that he was still there supporting me and being like, hey, go for it, do your best, be that person that you're always called to be, the best version of yourself, and serve people on the highest level possible. But at the same time, he's not looking to become a life and business coach like I was so excited and stoked to do. And it's okay. So that power of listening in conversation and realizing how it can affect your relationships in life, in business, is crucial. And I love that that was something that you were able to not only learn, Marcus, but also you're just giving from that experience, you're just pouring that lesson into everyone else and sharing that opportunity for them to be 10 steps ahead already from that.
Well, thank you. So on a quick side note on that topic you just said, it's the actual term is called active listening. And one of the best books I've ever read, because you're right, the entrepreneur journey can be very lonely. It's why we network. It's why we have calls like this, because
Sure.
like I said, selfishly, it's like-minded people getting to
Yes.
bond together. Because how relieving is it when you're talking with someone that gets your pain points, right?
Mhm.
One of the best books I ever read is by my business mentor's wife, and it's called What the I Didn't Sign Up for This. And it's
I'm
written
writing
by,
it down.
yep, it's written by Gabby Sprake, Gabi. And
Okay.
essentially it's from the perspective of the wife of an entrepreneur. And
Mhm.
sometimes, you know, they don't understand, they don't get it, because we have such a long-standing traditional business model. You know, the commute to work, do your 9 to 5, punch out, commute home. And that's what business is. And I think actually that's a wonderful transition, because that's what we're experiencing right now worldwide, is the emotion of grief.
Mhm.
It's grief because what was no longer is. And I'm not saying we're not going to normalize, we will. And some pieces of what used to be the traditional business model will continue forward. That's how the world works. But there's a lot of things that are happening right now that will also continue forward. So it's not going to be the same. And
Mhm.
the reason people are grieving is because only now are we starting to accept and realize that this isn't some little blip that's going to go in 2 weeks, but that as a society, and Bill Gates talked about this, we have this colossal opportunity to learn from what we weren't doing correctly. The question is, will we? Right? And you see things like plexiglass shields going up now on grocery checkout aisles to protect the workers. That's a lot of time and money investment. Do you really think when things normalize that they're going to spend more money and time tearing those down? No, it will just continue forward. So that traditional model, that rat race model, I like to call it, has been disrupted. It's been upset. It's been turned on its head. And most people are within that space. So now the entrepreneurs, we're like, it's just another day. not knowing what's going to happen today. We live with that uncertainty every single day. Welcome to our space, right?
Yes.
People out.
Mhm.
So let's talk about that for you, because I know you've been on your entrepreneurial journey for just over a year, you said. So what were you doing before, and what really inspired and motivated you to transition over to starting your own business?
Absolutely. Well, it's such a crazy time, but I do truly believe that in a way, the metaphor I like to use is that in some ways the world is dying to be reborn. And it's going through a painful time. It's almost like a rebirth right now. And we don't know what that's going to look like when you have a child. And as a parent, it's one of those things you don't know what that child's needs will be. You don't know what all of that's going to look like. And so for people that don't have their 9-to-5 jobs or were laid off, and now we're all facing a new normal, and it's global. It's a global impact. It's not just the US or Canada or China. It's it's a globe. So it's a whole new experience. But my journey started back or my huge transition started back in February of 2019, because I was giving birth to my first son. I was previously in the dentistry field, and as a dental assistant, I worked 4 different positions in our office, and I absolutely loved it. I loved the variety. I loved the flexibility of being a communicator between the different positions in the office, so that when there were conflicts or there were disconnects, I was a very good connector, in the sense that I was like, well, when it starts at A and it has to get to D, how can we make it one step instead of a total of 4? And so that was something that I absolutely loved in my position, as well as patient contact. Patient contact was just absolutely amazing. Nobody loves the dentistry field. I don't know why, but I did. And the greatest time that I had and the most impactful experience I had was as a student. People ask, why did you go into dentistry in the first place? My teeth were totally messed up. And actually, I have the molds from when I was 10 years old, and they're all crooked, all messed up, and gross. So I like to similarly compare that to my life and the different things that you have to sort out. And dentistry was something that looked as an opportunity for me to grow in self-development and expand my knowledge in areas of personal intercommunication and so much more. The experience that I had that really set my heart on fire for caring and serving people was a volunteer opportunity called Mission of Mercy. And it was where everybody in the dentistry field came together and did work for people for free. And to care with that empathy, that just put my heart on fire to serve people and to love people. And so I continued into the dentistry field and just had that passion while I was working in the field. I worked up to the day that I had my son because I needed the insurance. I was in that rat race you were talking about, Marcus, and I needed the insurance. And so I worked up to the day that he was born. And then my life changed because I was quitting my job to raise our son. And I didn't have the initial anticipation of entrepreneurship or anything like that. First step I knew was that I was going to be raising my son at home. And going from there was, we'll see what happens. My husband is the sole provider, and I was prepared for that. And so we were, ready to make those adjustments to our lifestyle and all of that kind of great stuff. So wonderful support there. But I found myself falling into postpartum depression, and I had a whole lot of issues, and my husband was relocated for work Monday through Friday. I was completely isolated in Minnesota. So I was like, how can I reach people and get back to that feeling of service and actually using my gifts and talents? I love my son, not that he is not enough or doesn't fulfill me, but I did feel that want and desire to serve and impact on a higher level. And I was like, how can I do that when I'm also trying to honor my priorities and honor who I am and what my choices are? And so that's where I turned to the internet. And the word entrepreneur, I was like, hey, what's that mean? What's that all about? And so I started actually just really searching. I joined a virtual team, wasn't for me, started as a virtual assistant, and I was actually asked to coach. And by that point, I was like, you know what, before I coach, I need to have a coach and actually figure out what the heck I can do, how I can serve people. But in my field of virtual assisting, I was doing more consulting than actual work. I was being that soundboard and strategist and things behind the scene. And they're like, you know what, you're more valuable as a coach in business and as somebody that's actually guiding people through this versus doing this putsy work. That's not, you know, and that was actually someone that was a coach. And so for me, that was a calling that I didn't realize I had. But being a coach, being a mentor, being someone that does that on a daily basis, they were like, it's obvious, you know, what are you waiting for? And I was like, I didn't know that was a thing. Okay. And so that was a huge epiphany for me. And that transition occurred, and it was the best decision I've ever made. And I've been so honored to be in this position to serve people and still growing and learning as I'm only a year in, as Marcus said. So
Right.
much to come. And 2020 has been crazy, but still a year of amazing learning and opportunities, and to connect with other entrepreneurs as yourself has just been absolutely outstanding.
Yeah, I mean, I can't criticize anything you're saying because it's how we met, and I'm glad we have. But I love what you said. Yeah, crazy, sure, but so much opportunity, right? And I also want to step back to your story. I love, because typically I've seen two approaches to entrepreneurship when people decide to make that transition. There's people like me that just jumped all in, and you're like, ugh, I got to make this work. And then there's people like you that smartly talked about it with your family and slowly transitioned over, said, can we do this? Are we able to sustain ourselves? So there's typically those two different approaches. I also like the fact for the reasons you did it, because this is something a lot of business owners forget. Small business, large business, is two things. One, the reason we do all of these things we do in the first place is because nothing matters more than the relationships in our life, right? That it's for the family, it's to take care of our family, and everything else is gravy. Often people get caught up in two things. One is we often identify our self-image with our position. You know, you ask somebody, hey, what do you do for a living? And they're like, oh, well, I'm a business mentor. Oh, people ask me that, what do you do for a living? And I talk about, hey, I actually get to hang out with people like Justine, and I spend time with my wife. You know, we like to binge through Netflix shows or go for walks in the park. And they're like, no, what's your job? And I'm like, oh, you didn't ask me that. Right? Because to me, they're separate things. My self-image, my sense of why I do everything is because I want to take care of my family and be able to do the things I want to do with those people when I want to do them. Whereas other people get trapped again in that sense of self-worth. It's attached to the lack of money for some business owners. They chase the money and they forget the focus in the first place. So all that anxiety, all that stress just tends to overwhelm and overload. And it's unfortunate that we lose that sight. So I love that you were very clear on what your vision was as to why you were doing this in the first place.
Thank you. No, and it's so difficult for some people because I think they don't know their vision. And I think that you have to take time to know who you are. Like you said, you knew who you were, what you wanted, that freedom to do what you want with your family, when you want, how you want, to be in charge of your life and finances, and where you want to go. Where do you want to see yourself? Do you want to see yourself, you know, working, you know, virtually from the Bahamas? Okay. You know, some people, that's, you know, regardless of what your actual outcomes are or goals are, you have to have a vision in order to know where to go. I always compare it to the metaphor, and people really like car metaphors for whatever reason, but we all use them. So we all know for the most part, it's like putting a destination in your GPS. If you don't have that destination, you can drive and you can try to come to my house in Minnesota. I'll tell you I'm in Minnesota, but without my address, you're probably not going to arrive at my front door unless you're some kind of a wizard. So it's so important to do that.
It is. Now, I actually, this is where I'm going to start to challenge you on things. This is fun.
Come ahead.
So I'm going to take that analogy one step further. You need to learn to drive.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, so often people have these lofty visions, and we're encouraged to do dream boards and to, put all that positive energy out there, law of attraction and this and that, and things will just manifest themselves. But people forget you have to do the work. And
Yes.
and the,
Yes.
and for some people, they don't know what the work is. So
Mm,
once you have that vision you're talking about, and it can't be like, oh, I want to work remotely from the Bahamas in 10 years. Well, okay, no, what are the details? Start to define it and be specific with what it is, because then you can actually reverse engineer the steps right down to a daily level. And that's one of our taglines for our mentoring program is success happens daily. Right?
yes.
Because
Oh,
really that's all we
absolutely.
have. We can't change yesterday. We can't change tomorrow. We can only focus on today. So being able to break it down to the point where oh, if I want to work in the Bahamas in 5 years instead of 10 or 3 years, whatever,
Mhm.
this is what has to happen. I need to start doing this today. Now you have the ability to drive the car to your house to enjoy cheesecake.
Exactly. Yes, you're coming for cheesecake. Heck yeah. And,
There you go.
for some people too, then it comes down to, is there fuel in your car? Can
Right.
you afford to do this? Taking that, even another one, are you prepared to make this, journey? Because unfortunately I'm not 5 minutes from your house. So you can't just run over for cheesecake. But
Right.
so it's one of those things. So when you have the steps and you're ready to, move forward with those tangible, actionable steps every single day, are you able to, work your 9 to 5 and then do your entrepreneurship from 7 to midnight? Can you do that? What are your duties? What are your priorities? How are you making this happen? And that could be paralleled, again, just for people that aren't in business, that could be paralleled to your physical health, your spiritual health, your relationships, anything else that you're working on, your home projects. If you say, I want to build my own house, that's beautiful. And you're a construction worker and you can do it on the side when you're done from work, but it ain't going to build itself. And if you don't know the proper, if you're not setting out those steps, you got to do the plumbing and get that well in before you start, other stuff. So it's just one of those things where you have to consider that for both life and business, and you can apply it in both cases.
Analogies flying everywhere.
Yes, I know. I'm
And we
sorry.
could, we could keep, it's okay. We could keep going on that with the car analogy and stuff. Like, can you read the map? Right?
Yes.
If you get stuck, do you know how to ask for directions? Like, there's so many things you could expand on. And the reason I said I like to
So
challenge
deep.
people on these things is because some people actually call me the anti-motivational coach, because I'm not big on all of these. Even earlier you said the term, that's a great nugget. And from you, I understand where your heart is in that. And so I'm always looking at people's hearts, but always paying attention to the things we buy into as well. And I'm not a fan, like, there's some coaches out there that are like, oh, if you go to $1,000 a day course and you get at least one nugget out of it, it was worth it. And I'm like, no, because I could get 20 nuggets at McDonald's for $4. Right?
Mhm.
That's a much better value. 20 nuggets, $4, one nugget, $1,000. No. So I like to take all of these motivational quotes, inspirational sayings, and really dig down to what does it mean practically and how can I apply it? And
Exactly.
not enough people do that. So it's refreshing that we can have that conversation, honestly.
And it's so important. I actually really agree, and I resonate so much with what you just said, Marcus, and I'm going to tell you why. Because when you look at all the positive, it's not realistic. It's very lofty in a way. And if you look at all negative, there's no hope, there's no faith, there's no opportunity, right? So when you combine them, the power is actually in so many different things. And so when I compare it to anything, it's when people are like, oh, I don't know what I want to do, for instance, with their life or with their business. Well, what don't you want to do?
Yeah.
What is going to help, for people that don't want to work out? Well, do you want to stay the way you look right now, the way you feel right now, your health right now? Like, looking at the negative actually creates that, sometimes it sparks that fire, or that initiation to take that step. And so there's so much power in the negative, Marcus. And I think that's so influential as a coach, as a mentor, to show people and to demonstrate how to utilize that for good. in their life and business. And so to take those lessons, to take those opportunities as things that actually can serve you. And so I think that that's so amazing. And I love knowing that about you and how you serve people by actually utilizing some of the negative things that happen in life and business.
Right. And we can talk. I noticed how you stumbled on the word negative because it's a label, because, you know, again, positive, negative, good, bad, light emotions, dark emotions, all these things. So I
Yes.
can appreciate that. And actually, that's something else you'll find interesting about me, I think, is as I'm not a big fan on habits. I don't believe people should adopt new habits or change their bad habits into good habits. Because what you're talking about, that whole negative approach or positive approach, is
Yeah.
the basis of behavioral therapy, right?
Mm.
You can leverage people to new behaviors by showing them what they won't have if they continue the way they continue, or you can do it by showing them what they will have should they leverage new behaviors. And the reason I say behaviors is, I'll give you an example. It's a quote from Bill Gates, and he said he likes to hire the laziest computer developers he can find. That seems really contrary, but the reason he likes to hire lazy developers is because they'll find the quickest way to solve something.
Oh, that is so interesting. I did not know that.
Right. And I heard that. I actually used to be a developer. It's what I went to school for. And then I was into digital marketing for 22 years. So I've only been at this for about 8 years, the remote project management stuff. So when I
Sure.
was a developer is when I heard that. And I love that because it triggered something in me that started me on the behavior journey. So for people listening, when you know what your existing behaviors are, right?
Mhm.
When you know what you naturally do, then instead of forcing yourself to go through, you know, is it 21 days that a new habit forms? Is it 90 days? I mean, the fact that we have to question it shows that nobody
I
really
know.
knows how long they stick. So instead, why not leverage the existing human behavior? It's the whole carrot versus stick theory, right?
Mhm. Yes.
Reward or punishment. I mean, we all respond to this behaviorally. So leverage the existing behaviors that you were born with towards greater success. And that's the approach I take with things. So it's not about helping people develop better habits. It's about simply leveraging their existing behaviors for greater success, right?
Well, and I think using those behaviors usually lead to their strengths, right? And so doubling down on their strengths and utilizing that to help them um, to move forward in life and business. I think that that's a really interesting perspective, because I know it's super hot topic right now is that I think it's James Clear that wrote Atomic Habits. I don't know if you've read that book.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. I based a whole new product offering called the One Thing workshops around his concepts.
oh, that's amazing. Well, it was one of those things that I know habit means something different to everyone.
Yeah,
But I think that James Clear is a very universal um, kind of medium that everyone can understand, because most of us have read or delved into his topics and logic. And I think it's just one of those things that you have to know what serves you, and that comes back to working on yourself and serving yourself first. Because if you realize that developing 5 new habits like the rest of your coworkers are kind of pressuring you to do, or the group challenges or different things that are coming from your environment, sometimes that can serve you or not be so helpful. And so it really depends on the individual, because I do believe, for instance, type A personalities or color red, they thrive on habit. They thrive on habits. And I guess that's something that I've seen in people. But if you're not one of them, then it's one of those things too, where it really comes down to self-awareness and self-knowledge. And no one can do that for you. And that's the one thing everyone wants a cheat sheet for. And that's the one thing that everyone wants a blueprint for. But you're the only person. There is no copy of you. So there's no way for me to, I might have a good idea about a lot of things, but at the same time, that self-knowledge and self-awareness is so crucial. I would love to know your thoughts deeper on that too, Marcus.
sure. So yeah, there's a phrase my mentor taught me. It's SOSA, self-observant, self-aware. So it's the same type of thing you're saying. I'm actually very contrary on this topic because again, there's a couple of things you said that I'm going to talk about, and I love that you even brought up personality profiles and stuff. I am not a fan of labels, because whether it's a positive label or negative label, it's limiting,
It's
and
very limiting. Thank
it
you.
is, and it
Thank you.
simply groups us
I
with
don't
others.
preach it. It's just a relative like idea starter. But no, that's so
Which I
powerful.
get.
Keep going.
Right. So you talked about how, work on our strengths and that kind of thing. So here's the thing. If you've ever done DISC profiling, the DISC profiling, that's one of the big standard ones. It's a little lengthier, a little more costly. But C is basically the systems aspect, right?
Yeah.
Now, if you get to know me, or if you know us from the groups we participate in, everyone thinks I'm the systems guy, because I've built an entire business off of systems and automations and all of those types of things. So the way DISC works is it scores you out of 100%. My C score, which is the system score, is 9%.
How awesome to have that background. That is so unique. That is
Right.
so cool.
So I actually looked at my biggest weakness and built a successful business on that, and then surrounded myself with the people way better at it to leverage it to where it is. Because obviously I like being in front of the camera more, having the interactions with people more. I like to think I'm well-spoken, quick on my feet. So those are my strengths. And yet I chose my weakness. So this goes back to what we talked about earlier with the idea of good and evil, right and wrong, light and dark, strength and weakness, right?
Yeah.
So by the same token, even with what James Clear is talking about, I agree and disagree. So the reason I agree and disagree is because it's not about chasing the habits. It is about changing the behaviors. Now, the byproduct of changing the behaviors is you naturally will get better habits. That's
exactly. Yes.
But if you pursue habits, then you're fighting sometimes against your behavioral nature, and it won't stick, it won't last, and you'll feel frustrated all the time. So it won't serve you. So I agree there is something to habits, but not chasing them. It's the same thing when I talk about Everyone Loves the E-Myth by Michael Gerber. It's
I haven't read that one yet.
It's a good read, because it's the default entrepreneur book. It's called the E-Myth Revisited. And the entire concept is this: are you working in your business, or are you working on your business? And his whole book is explaining that concept. I know you've heard that term. That's where it comes from, is Michael Gerber.
Perfect. Okay.
Right. And again, some of the things I agree with and I disagree with, because basically what he says is culture plus systems equals business. That I agree with. A lot of people chase business. They think they can do business, but you cannot do business. You can have a good set of culture and a good system in place, and that produces business, right?
Correct.
So there's certain misconceptions within our industry, and to your point of knowing yourself, understanding your why, like even Simon Sinek, start with why. He talks about why it's so important and everything else. And everyone in our industry gets on these kicks, and I get very frustrated because, like you said, no one can actually answer it but you. But take my $2,000 course and I'll show you how you can figure it out.
Oh, yeah, no.
Our entire industry is built on that. And it's something I find very, very frustrating. So I am all about the practical, and I will equip people as best I can. But you're right, there's certain things we cannot do. So let's make this more relevant to even today. So both of us are working with clients that are going through transitions, going through pivots, some of them more successfully than others. And the idea is, oh my God, help me. Just give me a solution that'll keep me going forward. As much as we would love to do that, we can help, we can consult, we can mentor, we can coach. My team, we've even rolled up our sleeves and we're doing the work for people to help them stay on track and pivot quickly. That's just something we've chosen to do. Yet at the end of the day, like, I can't answer why you're doing what you do in the first place. I can't create the idea for how you're going to pivot. So for example, I could suddenly say, you know what, Justine, in this transitional period, maybe coaching's not for you. Why don't you start doing, I don't know, remote hairstyling tips or something, and make
Right.
a course and charge people for that. And you could be like, okay, that makes sense. But right now, everyone and their brother is coming up with ideas on how to make a quick buck. Are these people qualified? Are these people doing what's true for them? Are they even good at it? And so there's so much out there right now that's so frustrating to watch, because yeah, we all need to survive and we all need to do things, but you can't just start these side hustles and like get out of your lane. You can't just suddenly do what someone else tells you to do because it might make you a buck or two. Like it just doesn't work like that.
If you want something to be a lasting brand and to be a successful venture, and I think that that's something that you help so much with, Marcus, is the systems and building from the foundational core too. Like I focus more on the individual in my coaching, and working through some of those things. But even what you're seeing and how we're both seeing people just, oh, I'm going to go and just set up a Shopify store and I'm just going to throw some t-shirts on there. Well, is that actually going to be served? Do you even know how to do that? Are you setting up the proper things? Like I don't know how to do that. So I wouldn't even know what questions to start asking. But that's something that people might, even some people in my tribe have asked me, and they're like, oh, I'm just going to go set up a Shopify store and I'm just going to do this. And I'm like, well, do you actually know how to do that? Who is going to be your supplier? How good are what's the quality of your product? How do you know any of that stuff? And they're like, well, I don't know. Well, I don't know isn't going to cut it. I don't know.
I'm gonna drop ship. I don't have to do anything.
No, yeah. So no, I feel for those people in the sense that I know that they're trying to do something, but at the same time, you can't give them that answer. You can't. There's no way I can answer that for them.
Right. And in our programs, we have 5 stages of commitment, and we call that stage 2. It's outcome without effort. Right. So it's more, what we've been calling it recently in the office is field of dreams, because that's what it is. It's if you build it, they will come. And man, I wish it was that way. I mean,
I do too. It would be, man. I mean, I don't even know if we'd be talking. We'd probably be on the beaches somewhere. I don't know. But right? I don't know. But I love what I do. So I would probably still be with you and maybe we'd be having cheesecake. I don't know. But at the same point, it's one of those things that life is not a fairy tale. And I think that circumstances today really demonstrate that, and the security that people thought that they had and how your lives are changing is, it's a big deal. It's a big deal. At the same time, there's that opportunity. And so for you to discover and to use this time as reflection, and maybe you are working, maybe you're one of the amazing people that's on the front line. I know that we both respect you and salute you and are grateful, just from the bottom of our hearts, for everything that you're doing. I have family that's doctors. I have everybody out there as essential work personnel. So my life really hasn't changed in the sense that no one's home partying, watching Netflix. So that's just the way my life is. But at the same time, just looking with this opportunity at how you can level up and become the best version of yourself by serving yourself first, but also still looking to create that impact in the world.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, earlier you talked about rebirth. I'm not going to contradict that. The way I've been looking at it is the world has essentially given us a giant go to your room timeout. So just like with parenting, right? With parenting, the idea is go to your room and think about what you've done. Now, obviously, as a society, we need to really be thinking about what we've done. But on an individual level, it's exactly what you just said. So many of us, when we were in that rat race, that 9 to 5, if that even exists, it was, oh, when I have the time, I will do this. When I have the time, I will work on this. And now here we are at home complaining that all we have is time. Right. So like you said, use this opportunity, develop some healthy behaviors within yourself, like leverage the things you enjoy doing. And if you're not sure what you enjoy doing, just think about what comes easiest to you. And this is something I like to tell people when they get started on that journey of self-discovery. Think about what comes easiest to you. And if you can't figure out how to do it, do some quizzes online or whatever. Come up with the different ideas to put the labels on it that will get you started. Because here's a truth. Just because it comes easy to you doesn't mean it comes easy to everybody else. And that's something... Yeah, we underestimate that so much. We're like, well, I can't charge people for that because if I can do it, everyone can do it. And it's like, no, everybody has their sacred gifts, and understanding and owning your gifts is a very important part of understanding what your purpose is right now on this planet.
Yes. And and realizing that maybe your purpose was, different previously, you know, there's phases in life too. So maybe your purpose was to be serving as that, you know, teacher in that school, but maybe you realize that now you have a love for online learning and you want to tutor students online. And maybe you're like, oh my gosh, I used to speak Chinese. Now I'm going to, you know, tutor Chinese students on how to speak English. Like, you never know where that's going to go. And change can be healthy. Change can be good. That means that you're growing. There's growth, there's development. And so it's one of those things that, like you said, what comes easy to you? What can you explore? What can you discover? You know, just, you have to give it that chance. You have to give it that chance.
And I love what you're saying there. My friend Monique, she actually teaches sacred gifts. And one of the greatest lessons she taught is, it's a formula. And the idea is called feeling on purpose. And the first thing she tells us is that nobody has one lifelong purpose. Gifts can be dormant or active at different times in your life. And to your point, yeah, you might have been on purpose doing this back here, but now being on purpose doing this. So I love that. I love that so much, because that is important. And yeah, it's self-exploration. It's doing things until something sticks. And that's that's the same process for business. Don't look for what's the right proper solution. Do it, test it, measure it, iterate on it, you know. And that's
keyword test, people.
That's a whole other lecture, really.
I know it is. It really is. But that was a huge keyword there for anything in life and business. You know, if something isn't working in your relationship, test it. You know, if you're, you know, working on something, you know, in business, test it. It's just, and that's why I love being a coach that integrates life and business, because especially as entrepreneurs, we both, hopefully you live and you have business. Hopefully you're still living somewhat, and have your business. That's my goal, at least, is to make sure that you're still having a life honoring your priorities and serving yourself to become the best image of your, not only image, but person, and being present for who you are today. Because like you said earlier, we have today. Yeah. Not everybody gets today. We have today.
No, it's true. And that, again, now you're opening up all kinds of topics. We could probably talk all afternoon.
I know. It feels like I've known you for ages. Like, for reals, this is our first call, guys. This has been amazing.
Well, I don't think it's going to be our last, definitely.
I don't either.
But you know what? I think I will wrap it up. And that doesn't mean you have to leave. I'm going to stop the recording. We can keep chatting for a bit. I do have another meeting in a little bit, but I would love to wrap up with you offline. So to everyone that did drop in today, because we did have some people come in and come out, really no questions, no interactions, just us, which was fine. I would love to say thank you so much for making the time today, for bringing your unique and, can I say, beautiful perspectives to the conversation. Like, I love your energy. I love your enthusiasm. You still have a purity about you. You haven't become cynical in the work you do. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Words are so much appreciated, and just to have the relationship and connection with amazing entrepreneurs and other individuals that stopped in here. If you're friends of Marcus, I think you got to be pretty awesome to be hanging in this group. So thank you so much for having me. It was truly an honor.
Awesome. Have a great day.